Hello and welcome. Tonight, traditional rulers meet with the president. The monarchs appeal for patience with government in the face of the planned protest by some Nigerians, as President Tinubu says the federal government will not encourage any protest that leads to the destruction of lives and property. Security operatives reel out the Riot Act. The military warns organizers of the protest against any form of violence, as the DSS said it has identified the funding lines, sponsors and collaborators of the planned protest. And 5 workers die, 5 others rescued alive after a building collapsed at the Arojobe Estate, Maryland, in central Lagos.
On business news, Senate launches probe into alleged mismanagement of refinery funds, summons NNPCL, CBN, Dangote and others over billions spent on refinery maintenance.
On sports, Super Falcons of Nigeria suffered defeats to Brazil in the women's football event at the Paris Olympic Games.
From the nation's capital, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, has cautioned security agents in the country against detaining suspects beyond the time allowed by law.
And in international news from London, US President Joe Biden has told Americans in a televised address that he decided to end his faltering re-election campaign in a bid to save US democracy.
Traditional rulers in the country have called for patience with government in the face of the planned protest by some Nigerians. Speaking in the State House after a meeting with President Bola Tinubu, the royal fathers said there is a need for all Nigerians to continue to work with the government to address the challenges facing the country. They promised to continue to engage with citizens to forestall a breakdown of law and order.
Officers at the ready, the red carpet laid out. The State House is ready for newly appointed ambassadors. The ambassador from the United States, the High Commissioner of Malaysia to Nigeria, and the High Commissioner of Botswana. One after the other handed in their letters of credence to President Bola Tinubu. In his remarks to the U.S. ambassador, President Tinubu is quoted in a statement by his special advisor on media, Ajuri Ngalale, to have touched on the issue of the planned protest by some Nigerians, saying, "During the military era, we made our voices heard against dictatorship, and I was part of the group that engaged in peaceful protests without resorting to the destruction of property. We've worked hard to ensure 25 years of unbroken democracy, and I will continue to maintain this democracy. Inasmuch as we believe that demonstrations are part of democracy, we will never encourage any protest that lead to the destruction of lives and property." Afterwards, the president meets with some governors led by the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum. They, however, declined to speak after the meeting. Next was a meeting with traditional rulers from across the country. In attendance were some ministers and Inspector General of Police. After the meeting, the traditional rulers called for calm and patience.
It is very difficult to build, but it is the easiest to destroy. We are all stakeholders of this country. We should be stronger as a nation together.
This protest, I know that it's catching you very, very high in your neck. But if you give us the chance, let us not destroy our own country. I ask you, think of Libya. Libya was a beautiful country. What has happened to Libya, we don't want it to happen here. Let's go home. Let's continue to strive the best that we can. and continue to work with the government to see if we can proffer some solutions.
Well, message we're taking back to our people is to be calm, to exercise patience, and also to listen to the words of wisdom coming from the traditional rulers, from the governors, because we have spoken to the president and he has given us the blueprint of what he has been doing over time, and we're hopeful, that inshallah it will be well.
It was a busy day for the president as he also met with a delegation of Islamic scholars. They speak on the outcome of their meeting.
Internally, we are against insurrection because this is not a protest. It is a protest that has the potential to lead to insurrection, the destruction of lives and properties and infrastructures. We are appealing to the people to shelve it. It is an ill wind that blows no one no good.
It will appear these meetings have proven invaluable in ensuring an exchange of information, all in a bid to ensure the peace and unity of the country. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasese, Channels Television News.
Reactions continue to trail the proposed nationwide protest over the state of the nation, as some states, including the Federal Capital Territory, are maintaining that they will not allow any protest in their states. States like Bauchi, Adamawa and the FCT are meeting to discuss the proposed protests. Youth groups in Niger and Sokoto states also distanced themselves from the protest.
This emergency meeting, held at the banquet hall of the Adamawa State Government House in Yola, is summoned by the leadership of the People's Democratic Party in the state to consider the state of the nation. Though the state governor is not in attendance, the resolution here is that the party should not encourage their members to participate in the protest.
We have seen what happened here. In Nigeria, Adamawa was almost one of those that ranked the most in the violence of the NSAS. We don't pray to see a repeat of that. Even if you sit down in your house thinking you're not affected, it will affect you.
At a separate event, the All Progressives Congress in the state is cautioning their members not to join the protest.
We are condemning those people who are intending to call for the protest against this government. We, in APC, we have more things to celebrate than to protest.
In the nation's capital, the FCT minister convenes a Security Council meeting. The FCT is considered one of the epicenters of the demonstration, and the minister is discouraging such.
For those who want to protest on the 1st or thereabout, FCT is not available for such a protest.
The Bauchi state government is also warning against such demonstrations.
Let me repeat it again. No protest is going to happen in Bauchi, and therefore no place is going to be closed in the state. Those thinking of doing that should think twice.
Groups in Sokoto and Niger states are also rejecting the protest.
We want to inform the general public that as a result of wide consultations between our members, we have decided to withdraw from any plans to go ahead with the protest.
All the 25 local government coordinators and the leadership of major civil society organizations in Niger State has distanced their forum and groups from the plan nationwide protest tag End Bad Governance.
The groups are urging the organizers of the protest to engage the government and arrive at a constructive resolution.
The Progressive Governors Forum is appealing to Nigerian youths to shelve their plan of a nationwide protest over alleged hardship in the country, as the forum expresses optimism that the current economic challenges in the country is being addressed by President Bola Tinubu. Now, speaking in Abuja after a meeting of the forum held behind closed doors, the chairman of the forum and governor of Imo State, Mr. Hope Uzodinma, urged Nigerian youths to shun all forms of instigation to unleash mayhem on the country in the name of protests. Governor Uzodinma assures Nigerian youths that state governors are committed to addressing the economic challenges in the country in line with the policies of President Bola Tinubu.
We want to advise for the interest of the country and as a show of patriotism. Our citizens must take ownership of this country because we have no other country we can call our own outside Nigeria. So we think that it is not wise at this moment for any demonstration by any group of persons, be it in whatever guise, so that we can manage the challenge of insecurity, the challenge of national minimum wage, the challenge of food security, and then the struggle to come out of the current economic recession. I think we are all working hard. It has to be a collective effort so that Nigeria will be better off for it. So those people who are now supporting or instigating groups of people to protest, we don't know what they are protesting for. And we invite all of them to sit down with us in a room so we can discuss and agree on the issues, what they are, and profile solutions. For we as a body, we are committed to the unity of the country. We are committed to whatever thing that will make Nigerians live better life, bring prosperity, jobs to be created, our young boys and girls who've graduated should be employed.
Meanwhile, Pan-Yoruba Social-Cultural and Social-Political Organization, Afenifere, has appealed to Nigerians to be circumspect on the issue of the nationwide protest being contemplated by some people in the country. A press statement issued by the group's National Publicity Secretary, Comrade Jare Ajayi, says that while the people have an inalienable right to protest, consideration should be given to the general atmosphere surrounding the planned protest. The Pan-Yoruba Social-Cultural and Social-Political Organization has appealed to Nigerians, of course, to be circumspect of the nationwide protest in the month of August. And it adds that the protest is not only a way to draw attention to the situation in the land, and that engagement is a very potent instrument not only to call attention to the situation on the ground, but to decide on what ways it should be. Ahead of the planned nationwide protest in the country, the military is warning organizers of the protest against any form of violence. Addressing a news conference in Abuja while providing details of the activities of troops in the fight against insurgency, the Director, Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba, says although citizens have a right to protest, the military will not condone any form of violent gathering. General Buba explains that those who are planning to replicate the violent protests seen in Kenya are misguided elements who think that war is a movie.
The level of violence being envisaged can only be described as a state of anarchy. The armed forces on its part will not stand by and allow anarchy to befall our nation. This is because we have seen wars and have witnessed anarchy in countries in which we have operated, particularly during the times of ECOMOG or during our peacekeeping operations in various countries. I believe that some people out there may fantasize about war or state of anarchy, thinking that it is like what they see in the movies. I assure you that war or a state of anarchy is not what you see in the movies. It involves real people, real situations, and real life.
In part two, after the break, 5 workers die, 5 others rescued alive after a building collapse at the Arowojobe Estate, Maryland, in central Lagos. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Traditional rulers meet with the president. The monarchs appeal for patience with government in the face of a planned protest by some Nigerians, as President Tinubu says the federal government will not encourage any protest that leads to the destruction of lives and property. Security operatives reel out the Riot Act. The military warns organizers of the protest against any form of violence, as the DSS says it has identified the funding lines, sponsors and collaborators of the planned protest. And 5 workers die, 5 others rescued alive after a building collapsed at the Iwuanyanwu estate, Maryland, in central Lagos. We'll continue with our reactions on the nationwide protest, and this time the Department of State Services, the DSS, says that it has identified, among others, the funding lines, sponsors and collaborators of the planned nationwide protest, and that the reason behind the protest is political. A statement issued by the Director, PR and Stratcoms of the DSS, Mr. Peter Iwuanyanwu, says the service has followed the discourse on planned protest in parts of the country, and that while peaceful protest is a democratic right of citizens, the service has confirmed a sinister plan by some elements to infiltrate the protest and use it to cause chaos and extreme violence in the country. Part of the statement reads, quote, "The plotters desire to use the intended violent outcome to smear the federal and sub-national governments, make them unpopular and pit them against the masses. The long-term objective is to achieve a regime change, especially at the center." End quote. The DSS also warns all the protest groups to eschew any form of proposed rage and anarchy. Well, the planned nationwide mass action has also caught the attention of the organized labor, as the Trade Union Congress TUC is asking security agencies to provide adequate protection for any citizen who has a reason to protest, insisting that such action is guaranteed in the Nigerian Constitution as a fundamental right of citizens. The union, however, the TUC distances itself from the much talked about national protest. Addressing journalists in Abuja, President of the TUC, Mr. Festus Osifo, also explains the rationale behind the acceptance of the 70,000 naira minimum wage by President Bola Tinubu, which has also been passed by the National Assembly.
You know, as the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, you know, we have been involved in several protests. We are also happy with some of the comment that we are hearing from different quarters, assuring that when the protests do take place, that these people will be protected. Because our concern really, we don't want a situation whereby the protest goes on and at the end of the day it leads to violence. So we want to hereby call on the Inspector General of Police and the entire security agencies to do everything possible to provide security for whoever intends to carry out protest, so that such protests will not degenerate into chaos. The leadership has never sat down one day on its own to call for strike or a protest. All we know is that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is very clear on the issue of peaceful protest. And the Police Act also mandated the police that when there is a protest, you should ensure that there is law and order. You should ensure that those that are protesting are also protected.
Away from the planned protest, 5 people have been killed following a building collapse at the Iwuanyanwu estate in the Maryland area of Lagos State. The Permanent Secretary, Lagos State Emergency Management Agency, Dr. Olufemi Okeosoyintolu, who confirmed this in a statement, said the incident happened at number 13 Wilson and Bar Street in the same estate, and those who died were site workers.
It's an unusual quiet that greets visitors not familiar with this area upon arrival at Wilson Mba Street in Iwuanyanwu Estate, Maryland, Lagos, following the building collapse that occurred in the early hours of the day. The only sound that's constant is that of government bulldozers at the site, clearing the debris. Officials from LASEMA, the Lagos State Fire Service, health workers, and Lagos State Building Control Agency are at the scene. A LASEMA director provides an update on the incident and the death toll.
Initial response efforts, by that we achieved recovery of 5 male adults alive, and of course 3 corpses, 3 victims that were dead, and of course one of them was taken one of the victims that was dead was taken to the mortuary. However, SEMU was on ground to pick the remaining 2, and as a result of the ongoing operations, we discovered that the fatality was increasing gradually.
He explains that there are standard procedures adhered to by emergency responders in Lagos State before bodies of victims are released to their families.
We have a procedure. Are you getting me? At the scene of incident, we recover the body. We ask the police to identify them and the people around to identify them. Once we're able to see any of the members of the family, we have to do documentation process, which will facilitate the release of the corpse. However, there's ones that we have recovered dead, were handed over to SEMU for onward delivery to the mortuary.
Earlier this year, the Lagos State government, through the Office of Urban Development and Lagos State Building Control Agency, finalized plans to synergize operations with the private sector to address the challenge of building collapse. The partnership, christened Accreditor Certifiers Program, is aimed at strengthening the capacity of government officials in monitoring and enforcement of building regulations in the state.
Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has declared that the commission is capable of successfully conducting the local government elections if saddled with the responsibility to do so by law. However, he raised the question of funding for the by-elections. Now, the INEC chairman made the declaration when he appeared before the Joint Committee on Electoral Matters to present the Ondo and Edo elections off-cycle election budget. Our National Assembly correspondent, Gloria Mezoke, reports.
Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, as well as national commissioners, appear before a joint committee on electoral matters over the upcoming governorship elections in Edo and Ondo states.
Power of incumbency is used.
The meeting also affords him the opportunity to comment on the possibility of the electoral body conducting elections for local governments following the Supreme Court's judgment on their autonomy.
If this responsibility for conduct of local government election is transferred to INEC, can INEC cope? The answer is yes, INEC can cope. So if we are asked to do these elections, yes, we can. And our track record actually proves that we can do it.
Reacting to more questions during this no-hold-barred session, the INEC boss explains its preparedness ahead of the governorship elections.
We have 57 days to the opening of polls in Edo State. And we have 113 days to the election in Ondo State. Is the commission prepared for the election? We are prepared for the election. We've learned valuable lessons, and Nigerians should expect to keep seeing tremendous improvement.
The INEC boss also appeals to lawmakers to speedily pass the National Electoral Offenders Bill to empower the commission to make arrests and investigate electoral offenders. Elsewhere, an investigation into the petroleum sector has kicked off in earnest as the leader of the Senate, Senator Okpeyemi Bamidele, who doubles as the chairman of the ad hoc committee, reveals plans to summon key players.
The committee, along with Nigerians, is particularly interested in understanding why local refineries are not working, despite the substantial amount of money spent annually on their maintenance and operation. We will closely examine what the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited has been doing to address this persistent problem.
In the event of a failure of a person or an entity to show up when summoned, the Senate can issue a warrant to the Inspector General of Police to compel that corporation or entity to make itself available to this subcommittee.
The investigative panel also vows that it will not be business as usual as it hopes to meet with these key industry players from September 10 in a public hearing after several engagements across Lagos, Port Harcourt and Warri. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
The People's Democratic Party campaign train has hit the road ahead of the September the 21st governorship election in Edo State, making its first stop in Ovia Southwest local government area. The governorship candidate of the PDP, Asue Ighodalo, and his running mate, Osarodia Ogie, addressed supporters in different rally points. Mr. Ighodalo insists the PDP has the capacity to provide quality leadership, which is the solution to the current economic challenges in the country.
The message where we give today, say that by the grace of God Almighty and by una power, when we enter government again for November, everything will improve. We go turn this our Edo State into Obodo. All of una, some of una go school with Oyibo, some of una na pikin go school with Oyibo. When we dey school with Oyibo, we dey do better than them for school. How they get country way better pass our own? Make we answer now. How they get country way better pass our own? We go school, we don't book past them, we get sense past them. It be like say we don't love ourselves. So we now don't come, we go love ourselves. We go force ourselves to love ourselves. We go change all this JS story. No more poverty, no more suffering. Countries dey this world where no poor man dey. So we go make our own country, make no poor person dey. Everybody wey wan work go see work to do. That is the way God can send us to be that. And by the grace of God, we go do them. Some of us, they fear, say you come out house, you don't sure say you go come back. Somebody go catch you for road. All those things, by the grace of God, we go finish them.
Let's now head to the nation's capital, where Terry Kumi is standing by to give us the very latest from our Abuja studios. Over to you, Terry.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Lateef Fagbemi, has cautioned security agents in the country against detaining suspects beyond the time allowed by law. He specifically admonished security agents to always abide by provisions of Section 35 of the 1999 Constitution in relation to rights of suspects in their custody. The AGF, who spoke on Thursday in Abuja at the yearly lecture of the Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, warned that any security agent found detaining suspects beyond the constitutionally allowed period would be severely sanctioned. He said law enforcement agents must be diligent before arresting anyone, adding that situations where people are languishing in detention cells beyond the time allowed under the Constitution or by order of the courts will no longer be tolerated, and appropriate sanctions shall be meted out to those found guilty of contravening the laws of the land. According to him, the government of President Bola Tinubu will not condone any reprehensible action, and as the chief law officer of the country, he will ensure that no one tramples on the right of another. But still ahead on the news at 10, the Senate launches probe into alleged mismanagement of refinery funds, summons the NNPC, CBN, Dangote and others over billions spent on refinery maintenance. That's in business news. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the news at 10. Now, since 2020, over $1.5 billion have been spent by the federal government to protect the nation's oil installations and curb crude oil theft. Well, that's according to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, who was represented by the Permanent Secretary, General Services, Mr. Maurice Namdi, at the investigative hearing of the House of Representatives on crude oil theft. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House says $10 billion have been lost in 7 months to crude oil theft, and no magic can be done by the government with such a loss. The Special Committee on Crude Oil Theft, set up by the leadership of the House of Representatives, holds a public and investigative hearing on all dimensions of crude oil theft and losses. This hearing is necessitated by the instability rocking the oil and gas sector, which has continued to negatively affect the revenue of the country.
We have identified that firepower and other weapons of engagement are grossly inadequate compared to the number of security operatives drafted to combat armed crude oil thieves. In the light of these findings, our committee has resolved to enact adequate legislation, including budget allocations, to support security agencies, improve existing laws to combat crude oil theft.
The report of the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which shows that over $46 billion was lost due to stolen crude between 2009 and 2020, is a major concern for the government.
The government has invested considerable resources in combating this menace. Since 2020, expenditure aimed at addressing crude oil theft and securing our oil infrastructure has exceeded $1.5 billion.
We expect that 70% of what is being stolen are being exported. So we come across three types of losses: the engineering losses that we know of, the actual losses, which is the hydrocarbon that is being stolen or being lost in the environment, and as well as the opportunity losses. The combination of that culminated as of that time to about 700,000 barrels. The people who are supporting this in this space are known. They are known by names, they are known by companies, they are known by account details.
In declaring the event open, the Speaker of the House, represented by the Deputy Speaker, also raises alarm over the theft in oil and gas sector in just a few months of the present administration.
It is estimated that between January and July 2024, Nigeria lost an average of 437,000 barrels of crude oil per day due to theft, vandalism, and other criminal activities. At the current price of oil, this translates to over $10 billion over this period of 7 months. I wonder how a government that loses about $10 billion in 7 months will be expected to meet up with its responsibilities for the citizens.
The special committee, whose lifespan runs throughout the 10th Assembly, is the House's response to addressing once and for all the massive theft in the oil and gas sector and revealing all those behind it. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, says the federal government has diligently serviced all its loan obligations with approximately 7.3 trillion naira of the Ways and Means repaid to the Central Bank of Nigeria in the first quarter of 2024. Mr. Edun made the remark during the quarterly ministerial briefing of the Finance Ministry with the theme Economic Recovery and Growth, Progress and Prospects 2024. He highlights the immediate priorities of government, including stabilizing food inflation and prices, social protection, and improved business environment. Our correspondent Victoria Longjohn reports.
The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, arrives for the quarterly ministerial briefing of the ministry aimed at providing details of the trajectory of the nation's economy. Flanked by heads of agencies, directors, and top management of the Finance Ministry, Mr. Edun gives a performance update on the nation's economy in the first quarter of 2024.
There has been a reconfiguration of the processes and the procedures in order to give greater visibility, greater transparency, and therefore accountability in government spending. That is the way government can earn the trust of the people that their money is being spent wisely. This government has exited Ways and Means borrowing. Total debt service has declined from 97% of revenue in the first half of 2023 to 68% in 2024.
He also touches on the economic interventions and government's plans for the rest of the year.
There is the focus on inflation, there is the focus on production, and there is the focus on supporting business as a whole. As part of the implementation plan of the short-term stabilization package, particular focus will be given to driving food security, creating an improved investment climate for oil and gas. We expect inflation. By the time we can have successful harvests and we can reduce post-harvest losses, we expect inflation to come down to between 20 and 25%, as already signaled by Central Bank, by the way. We expect the total debt stock to be below, in dollar terms, $95 billion. And we expect the budget deficit to be around 4%, which is the target.
Pertinent on the minds of Nigerians is the soaring food prices, as the figures put forward by the government seems like a far cry from reality. However, the minister explains government's plans to drive down the prices of food in the country.
There is, as I said, importation taking place on a temporary basis, not in a way that would now discourage, incentivize, and hurt local domestic producers. No, it's raw materials for them to make into finished goods, to make into food, to make into feed. So focus is on the agricultural sector in a fight. It's a war to get food prices down.
The minister assures Nigerians that the economy has turned a corner and it is set for growth and progress. He also appealed to Nigerians to be patient with the present administration for the macroeconomic policies to come to fruition. From Abuja, Victoria Longchan for Channels Television News.
And that's all from the nation's capital. Back to Ayo in Lagos.
Thank you so much, Terry. The Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM, has held its annual forum focusing on how best professionals can leverage on their organization's greatest asset, which is its human resource, for business success. With the theme Strategic People's Management, Leveraging Your Greatest Assets for Business Success, the forum provided an opportunity for various speakers who touched on important areas companies must key into in running their businesses to maximize available human capacity, the most essential resource of their organizations.
It is the second edition of the Chief Executive Officers, Chief Human Resource Officers and Human Resource Directors Forum of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM 2024.
So I ended up being chief engineer.
HR professionals are here to navigate how members can utilize the most vital human resource within their establishments.
We need to focus more and more on the strength of people because their strength is their nature. We are training them, developing them to do more of what they love. Nobody trained me to be an eye, but I love to come up with new ideas.
Other guest speakers go further to suggest ways of maximizing human capacities within an organization.
So the first would be around business, understanding the business. The second is chemistry, and it's just building that relationship and cultivating that relationship. It's not something that would happen, you just do one. It's something that has to continue over time. And I think the third thing I would say would be around communication.
Your HR person is trying their best to learn the business, to learn you, to accommodate you. Meanwhile, they're also supposed to be your advisor, your consultant, your ally. You are supposed to learn human resources as well.
President and Chairman of the Governing Council, CIPM, speaks further on contributions of the body to business entities and the economy at large.
You cannot do anything at all without people, you know. And when we talk about people, we're talking about strategic talent, you know. We are talking about resourcing either businesses or public service organizations with the right kind of talent and the right kind of people who will help drive this. So what they do invariably, you know, is what translates into, of course, growth in the economy.
It is important that individuals that sit in those roles, occupy those roles, have the requisite knowledge, skills, and experience to deliver to the organization and thereby impact on the sustainability, the profitability, and the bottom line of the organization.
The Chief Executive Officers, Chief Human Resource Officers and Human Resource Directors Forum is an annual event that brings together top executives, human resource leaders, industry experts to discuss and explore key trends, challenges, and innovations in the field of human resources and organizational leadership, targeting business growth.
The Toleram Group will continue to support the creative industry in the country and promote the unity of the nation. Temitope Asiwaju Group Corporate Communication and Events General Manager Dufil Prima Foods Limited said this while playing host at the company's corporate headquarters to Dr. Fola David, Guinness World Record holder for the largest drawing. He describes the feat as a great accomplishment which resonates with Toleram's brand value.
After 9 years of planning and 6 days of back-breaking creative adventure, Dr. Fola David makes history by bringing the largest drawing by an individual to life, setting up a new Guinness World Record. This drawing, at a size of 1,000 square meters, dwarfs the previous record of 629.98 square meters held by Indian artist Ravi Sani. It's a moment to be proud of, and in the spirit of appreciation, Dr. Fola visits the Toleram Group in Lagos, a major backbone for the project.
We're here to celebrate one of us who has done a great feat by breaking the world record, the largest individual painting in the world. Once again, let's give it up for Dr. Fola David.
The large drawing of the map of Nigeria describing unity in diversity comes with lots of lessons and notes.
And in order for us to ensure that we were doing the right thing and staying true to our cause, we explored the various cultures. I had to experience these cultures across the country by myself. And this was all made possible because Toleram understood and bought into the vision.
Dr. Fola hopes it will inspire other Nigerian youth to build upon the country's endowments.
I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of issues with our economy, with our sustainability, with most of the policies and everything that's going on in the country. But there are some backbones and there's some pillars that need to be upheld. If you don't have those pillars, you can't move forward as a country. The development of the nation really, really depends on the unity of the nation, the love that exists in that nation, and peace in the nation.
Toleram Group is committed to promoting creativity and will continue to do so, says Temitope Asiwaju.
For us, we feel that Toleram and Fola Davies is the beginning of greater things to come. And we'll continue to intimate Nigerians, most especially through the different media platforms, of what next will happen on this journey.
While Dr. Fola's work is set to find a permanent home at the Free Trade Zone, the feat has also shown that nature has a way of aligning its resources when thoughts are put into action.
The President General of Ohanese Ndigbo Worldwide and President of Owerri People's Assembly, Chief Emmanuel Iwuanyanwu, is dead. A statement issued by his son, Jide Iwuanyanwu, who confirmed the developments, said the 82-year-old chairman of Champion Newspapers died after a brief illness. The statement adds that the burial details will be announced later by the family after due consultations. The late Iwuanyanwu, a Nigerian politician and businessman, emerged as the 11th President General of the Igbo Social-Cultural Organization on April the 20th, 2023, having succeeded George Obiozor, who led the Ohanese Ndigbo for 2 years, but died on December the 29th, 2022. It's now time for some business news with Will Ibom.
Thank you, Ayotunde. Welcome to Business News. Now, the Senate says it is set to question major industry figures, including the Central Bank, NNPC Limited, and Dangote Group, over allegations of economic sabotage in the petroleum sector. This follows concerns about billions spent on refinery maintenance The 14-member Senate committee, formed on July the 23rd, will investigate the spending on state-owned refineries over the past decade. A public hearing is scheduled for September the 10th, where contractors involved in refinery maintenance will be called to account. Senate members have pledged to tackle corruption head-on, warning that no one will be exempt from scrutiny. Now to some company news. Listed telecoms giant Airtel Africa has released its financial results for the second quarter of this year, showing a mixed performance within the period. According to the report sent to the Nigerian Exchange, the telco's group revenue came in lower, 16.1% in reported currency change, against a figure reported last year at $1.15 billion, while its operating profit fell by 27.4% to $335 million. Further highlights of the financial results shows that the group's pre-tax profit grew by more than 133% compared to the same period last year at $74 million, while after-tax profit surged by 120.3%. Now, it's a bloodbath at the domestic stock market as key sectoral indicators slumped. In today's trading session, the NGX recorded losses for the third consecutive day. Laddie Williams tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, it's still selling activity on the local bourse. 3 days in a row, we've seen the bourse down and losing that 300 level on 100,000 points index, 0.21% down, a bigger drop compared to the previous days, market cap 56 trillion. Let's look at the sectoral performance now. And yeah, banking again, banking 1.59% down. Then we see the loan gain today and the sectors that we track, 0.01% for the oil and gas counter, thanks to gains on the share price of O&O PLC, up about 3%. I guess on that news, that Italian energy company ENI got approval to sell its Nigerian unit, NAOC, to Iwuanyanwu. So we see that reaction there. But the big hammering again, 1.59% for the banking counter. Final trading day of the week tomorrow. As the month of July winds down, analysts and investors must be wondering what the next catalyst will be for the local bourse. But today, the bears come out to play.
And that's a wrap on business. It's back to you, Ayotunde.
Thank you so much, Will. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has paid tribute to U.S. President Joe Biden for 50 years of support for the state of Israel. This comes as the pair met today at the White House. Here's Simon Tuesday with other international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. US President Joe Biden has told Americans in a televised address that he decided to end his faltering re-election campaign in a bid to save US democracy.
My fellow Americans.
Mr. Biden said he felt his record as president merited a second term, but that nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. He said he endorsed US Vice President Kamala Harris to unite their fellow Democrats and the country. The White House speech marked his first public appearance since he left the race on the 21st of July, paving the way for Ms. Harris to run for the party's nomination.
It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union, it's not about me. It's about you.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told US lawmakers that our enemies are your enemies in a landmark speech to Congress intended to rally support for the war against Hamas in Gaza. The Israeli leader received a raucous reception from mostly Republican politicians as he delivered a speech to a joint session of Congress. However, many Democrats didn't attend, and there were pro-Palestinian protests inside and outside the capital.
We meet today. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
Meanwhile, the Israeli military says it has recovered the bodies of 5 Israelis taken back to Gaza as hostages during Hamas's attack on southern Israel on the 7th of October. The bodies of kindergarten teacher Maya Goran, as well as the soldiers Major Ravid Ayaz Katz, Master Sergeant Oren Goldin, Staff Sergeant Toma Ahimas, and Sergeant Kirill Brodsky were found during an operation in the Khan Yunis area. The announcement means 111 of the 251 people taken hostage are still being held in Gaza, including 39 who the military say are presumed dead. Philippine authorities are rushing to contain an oil spill from a capsized ship as powerful typhoon Gaimi hit the island. The MT Terra Nova sank in the Manila Bay while carrying 1.5 million litres of industrial fuel, prompting fears that it could be the worst oil spill in Philippine history if not contained. Meanwhile, 5 other freight ships are stranded off the island. Typhoon Gaimi swept through northern Taiwan, killing 3 people and triggering flooding before barreling west across the Taiwan Strait towards China, where it is expected to dump more torrential rain. It is expected to be the biggest typhoon to hit China's eastern seaboard this year. Buildings in the Canadian tourist town of Jasper have been burning after wildfires forced 25,000 people to evacuate the area. The blaze has spread through Jasper National Park, causing significant loss within the town. Hundreds of wildfires have sparked in the western provinces of Alberta and British Columbia. The region has been hit by more than 58,000 lightning strikes within the last week, sparking new blazes after a 3-week heatwave. Police are investigating the abduction and murder of Zambia's newly appointed broadcasting regulating chief. Guntila Mayela's body was discovered on the outskirts of the capital Lusaka on Wednesday with gunshot wounds. His death has shocked people, especially as the motive is unknown and as gun violence is not common in the southern African nation. Police believe the Director General of the Independent Broadcasting Authority was kidnapped after leaving work on Tuesday. And the world has again registered its hottest day on record this past week, inching past the previous high recorded just 24 hours earlier on Sunday. That's according to data from a European Union monitoring agency. As heat waves sizzled around the world and wildfires engulfed parts of the Mediterranean, Russia and Canada, the global average surface air temperature rose to 17.15 degrees Celsius or 62.87 degrees Fahrenheit on Monday. That was 0.06 Celsius higher than Sunday's record. This is despite the world moving out of the El Nino climate pattern, which generally amplifies global temperatures. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. Time to talk sports now. We begin with updates from the Paris Olympic Games, where the Super Falcons of Nigeria this evening suffered a disappointing 1-0 defeat to Brazil in their women's football opener. The game's decisive moment came in the first half when Gabriela Nunes da Silva unleashed a ferocious strike from an accurate pass from women's football legend Marta. The Super Falcons, who are making a return to the Olympics after a 16-year absence, will face world champion Spain in their next game on July 28. An earlier reigning Ballon d'Or winner, Aitana Bonmati, scored 1 goal and helped create another. Away from football, Lim Sion delivered an emphatic statement earlier today that she is the woman to beat at the Paris Olympic Games as the mighty South Korean archery team warmed up for another assault on the medal podium. The 21-year-old Lim shot a world and an Olympic record 6.94 in the women's individual ranking round, breaking the previous mark of 6.92 held by compatriot and 2020 Olympic champion Sang-Ye Chong. And former Wimbledon champion Elena Rybakina has pulled out from the Olympic Games tennis tournaments, joining men's world number 1 Yannick Sinner in skipping the event. The 4th-ranked player had been included in the draw made earlier today at Roland Garros, the home of the French Open, but her name was later removed by organizers. And that's your sports news tonight. I'm Kelly. It's back to Ayotunde.
Many thanks, Kelly. And the main news again. Traditional rulers today met with the President Bola Tinubu in the nation's capital as the monarchs appealed for patience with government in the face of the planned protest by some Nigerians. President Tinubu said the federal government will not encourage any protest that leads to the destruction of lives and property in the country. And security operatives reeled out the riot act as the military has warned organizers of the protest against any form of violence. The DSS has said it has identified the funding lines, sponsors and collaborators of the planned protests. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Iwuanyanwu Balogun. To have a good night and please stay safe.